Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our weekly dive into D&D called Mastering Dungeons. I am Shawn Merwin, here with my friend and co-host, Teos Abadia, but we also have a special guest who Teos will introduce.
All right. So I am so excited about this, Shawn. I mean, usually it's just you and me, but today, right? I mean, who do we have? It's Celeste Conowitch of 2C Gaming. Hello, Celeste.
Hi! Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We are excited to have you here. Awesome. Thanks for joining us.
We are. You're really classing up the joint, let me tell you.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
It's a lot of pressure. Keeping it classy.
You know, this is a nice kind of back before I was a co-host. I listened to the fun episode where you and Shawn talked all about Venture Maidens.
Oh, yeah.
So this is like a tie-in. This is where if it was a comic book, we'd have like a little C issue something, but we don't know what issue number is.
Yeah,
and the threads are colliding.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. Well, you have some exciting news coming up about what you are doing with 2C Gaming and Venture Maidens. Could you tell us a little bit about that and what you're doing?
Yeah, I certainly can. So, big exciting news. I am taking a huge step with 2C Gaming and Venture Maidens partnering together to produce the Venture Maidens Campaign Guide, which is going to be coming to Kickstarter next month, so April. Or I guess whenever this is published, very soon. Look at Kickstarter. So luckily, 2C Gaming is amazing at kickstarting projects. You know, they have done so many successful RPG books at this point and funded them. So I was so thrilled when they wanted to work with Venture Maidens to kind of make our dream happen of producing the campaign guide. You know, because the show itself, Venture Maidens, is an actual play podcast set in an entirely homebrew world of my own creation. So we are going to be seeing that setting come to a book along with a bunch of new subclasses, monsters, items. We have a brand new Heroic Destinies system that we're previewing, which will be a really cool way to make like personalized character arcs in your stories. So I'm just over the moon that y'all were like, yes, you can come on and talk about this thing. So thank you so much.
Well, yeah, a lot has been on our mind recently about sort of rules and how to mesh rules with setting. And so your project sort of fit in very nicely with that. So after our news segment, we're going to dive deep into that topic where you can talk not just about about rules and things, but you can talk about specifically what you're going through as you take your world and gamify it, if you will, and make the rules mesh with your vision for that campain.
I've got some questions about that. I'm excited about that.
Teos, I may have answers.
Teos has questions.
This is how it is in my life. I have lots of questions. Answers? No. Questions? Yes.
But before we get to that, we do like to cover a bit of news here, and there has been news coming fast and furious in the D&D world, so we thought we'd take a few minutes to cover that, including our first little tidbit that Candlekeep Mysteries is now available for you online or from your favorite local gaming store, and it's got its special edition cover that I've seen mine floating around. You don't actually get a special edition cover when you order on D&D Beyond, so I'm going to miss out on that, I'm afraid. Oh, Teos is holding it up.
Holding it up.
Oh,
it looks so
pretty.
Shiny in person. I haven't seen the special cover yet. I got the regular old cover.
Yeah. It looks like it's made to look like a cool old book, right? That would be. I don't know from what era that is, but sort of a classic-looking book cover that you can put on a shelf, and it's sweet. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, it's like when a publisher reissues old books and they give a nice fancy cover with gold letters and leather. That makes me sing. That makes me want all the books like that. I want to complete
the
set of books.
Yeah. Well, and then also that alternate cover was actually how that book appeared in the Baldur's Gate video game. There was a book called Candlekeep Mysteries, and it looked exactly like that. You could see it on the screen in the game, so that's the reason they went with that for the alt cover.
Cool.
I had no idea.
Yeah, I did not know that.
Yeah, because a lot of people were like, wow, this is kind of simpler than a lot of their alternate covers, but it was heralding to the video game appearance of this book. So it was like a little like Easter egg.
Yeah.
In real life.
Sweet.
Yeah.
I also note it has 2 fairies on the cover, so more fairy stuff. They confirmed.
Yeah. The conspiracy.
Mm-hmm. The Teos conspiracy theory of fae, everything fae, and then, or just put jammer on the end of any word.
Fae jammer. We've done it.
And I'm sure at some point in future episodes we will talk about Candlekeep Mysteries in more detail, as we do with most books that come out from Wizards. But we're not going to delve too far into that today because we want to get to our next bit of news, which is Gen Con. While they have postponed the convention until September 16th through 19th, they are saying that they still do plan to have in-person gaming as well as online gaming and what they're calling pop-up Gen Con, which will run at local game stores around the world. I have not seen any registration hotel event information yet. They're saying that it will probably be coming soon. Any thoughts on this?
I heard that the cosplay is all radiation suits.
That would work.
That would work.
That would work.
They did have a couple of like they had a blog talking through it and their press release where they do say they're going to be consulting with safety and health advisors to make changes to the plan as needed. I think the big question is sort of, is this a good idea? There are a number of conventions that are now in the September timeframe. September is the new July for conventions, it looks like, for this year. And, we're all just wondering whether this is going to work. I think most people feel pretty uncomfortable about going to a convention, but maybe that makes it safer to go to a convention because there'll be fewer people and hopefully they're all vaccinated. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I've gotten 4 invitations to conventions in the last 48 hours.
Yeah, they're definitely starting to pour in as people are like, maybe it's happening, maybe.
Yeah. And my joke was Gen Con is only going to be 100 people, and yet all the downtown hotels are still sold out.
Yeah.
But the year I could have gotten a hotel.
Yeah, there you go. I think I might just get a hotel even though I'm not going, just to know what it feels like to have a hotel reservation downtown.
Yeah.
That'd be cool. Yeah. Just maybe they can virtually show you what your room would look like.
That's right. For
$100 a night or $400 or whatever.
Yeah.
I do feel for all these conventions because, if you just stop and think about, well, where does an entity like Gen Con make its money from every year? And then you kind of realize, it's the convention and it's not happening. And there are, no vendors or fewer vendors. And they've had a whole year, right, of essentially no income or very little income. And then there's another one. And this is true of all these different conventions. And so it's quite horrible for them, right? It's terrible. Yeah. And I'm sure, that it's probably really, really important for them to be constantly trying to think, when will it be safe? And then we need to have time to reserve. So you've got to announce it ahead of time. And you don't want to go too late in the year. So here we are, right? And so I understand that. And I think they will make the right call if they need to pull out of it. But
I think
start somewhere.
There's too much at risk for anyone to do things that are totally, totally unsafe. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Nothing is going to be totally safe anymore. Heck, we talked about con crud, back in 2000 or even earlier, that you would get sick going to these conventions. Not as sick as COVID, obviously, but it's going to be a tightrope to walk for the industry, and a choice on the behalf of the people whether it's worth it to take the risk to go.
Yeah, it's really interesting because now that I'm working with 2C Gaming, who traditionally goes to all of these conventions, actually watching that from that side too, because gaming companies make a ton of money selling their stuff and getting new players for their games and their products. So that tightrope balance is so important for everyone is kind of holding their breath with this.
Yeah, it can be, and it's an interesting mix because I think for very small companies, it can be a really tough question whether to go. And one thing that maybe is good is that companies have had some time to assess, sort of without Con and with Con, how do you what's your balance sheet look like? And so maybe it's healthy, because I was reading someone from Crafty Games who was sharing about how much time it required of them to prepare for a Gen Con. And what that's like to essentially just lose months of work on either end of Gen Con as you prepare for it. And then you have the costs on top of it. And so you're always trying to figure out, does this validate my being a vendor there as a very small company?
And at its peak, companies were starting to not go to Gen Con anyway because of that cost. So, maybe this will bring costs back into line for companies. To be able to actually attend some shows. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Speaking of industry news, ICV2 has released its 2020 industry review. What did these numbers look like, Teos?
So overall, it's all good news, like we've been reporting on the show. The hobby game industry is up 15% over 2019. That's all of the sectors. So this is board, card, minis, all of it, role-playing games. D&D, as we've heard before, 33% growth in income over 2019, which is absolutely incredible, given that we've already been in previous years talking about big growth. So it's just growth upon growth. And as we mentioned in the previous industry, lean, high profit growth. It's not just revenue, but it's lean to run D&D, and so it's a big deal. The top RPGs in the hobby, they always rank them, and it's non-mass market or online, so it tends not to account for things like Amazon, and it's not a complete picture, but the order that ICV2 has is D&D followed by Pathfinder, then Cyberpunk coming onto the list, Aliens coming onto the list, and Fate. So it's quite a shakeup from what it's been in previous years at the bottom 3 slots. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Retail sales were down. You'd expect that because of COVID. Online is up. No surprise. But overall sales are strong, and Kickstarters for tabletop games rose $237 million, up 34%.
Wow.
The collectible game market, the collectible game market, and I hear all of that is because of the Venture Maidens Kickstarter.
We're here. You're welcome.
It's just anticipation, build up. The collectible game market, which is just short of $1 billion. That's mostly Pokemon, Magic the Gathering, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Then you have miniatures, which had a strong year at $415 million, and that's despite kind of nobody going into stores in the same amounts. But apparently, brushes and paint sales were really high as everybody decided that they had time at home to paint.
Finally.
And then board games hit $425 million, so pretty similar to miniatures. The strongest are the typical things like Pandemic, which I do find is a little ironic, Root, Gloomhaven, and your old standby that my kids still pick up off the shelf and play, I don't know why, Monopoly.
You have to teach your children better, Teos. That's all I'm saying.
We play all kinds of games. When the buddies come over, it's like Monopoly, and I don't know. I mean...
Yeah. Hey... I read that the Candyland is the best game ever thread on Twitter, so I can't really argue with anybody.
No
it's like pro accessibility and everything. Okay, now we have to like Candyland.
I guess probably Pandemic is on there. I mean, because you can play that with 2 players. So it must, maintaining that legacy. It's one of the very few games that works very well with 2 players or more.
True.
In the sport.
Yeah. And then they did note in this article that new titles have had trouble gaining traction, new board game titles, and I could see that, right? If you're not seeing it in the store physically and you're not hearing about the player, So.
And speaking of collectible card games, Magic the Gathering has announced when its D&D set will release. That will be July 16th. The set will be called Adventures in the Forgotten Realms, and it will replace the usual mid-year core set. What do they say about it? They say that this new set will be flavorful and mechanically unique for players. It is also announced they use the words begins the journey, that this Adventures in the Forgotten Realms will begin the journey into Faerun. So it could mean that more sets are being planned. And that's all on comicbook.com. I'm not a Magic player. Well, I may become a Magic player on July 16th.
I think that's what they're hoping.
Yeah. Yeah. I am definitely their core audience for this.
If you had to take that begin the journey thing and think you're sitting in the offices at Wizards, you've got a Magic group, you've got a D&D group together, how do you not launch Planescape and do a plane spanning set and bring the two together?
How do you not do Spelljammer?
I mean, that's obvious.
That's obvious, right there.
Put a giant hamster in a blender, and out comes Spelljammer. That's how we make the thing, I heard.
Yeah, I mean, this is big. We've been saying, for those of us who have been playing D&D and have recognized the behemoth that is Magic: The Gathering, how are they not melding these two in some way? And slowly but surely they're getting there, and we will see it on July 16th, what they've come up with. I mean, I know how to play Magic, so I'm wondering what mechanically unique experience is going to be, but that's why they're the game designers. Hopefully it will be exciting.
Yeah, and they did somewhere in one of our shows, we covered some of the information that was there, where there's sort of some like party mechanics and class mechanics. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But yeah, I will totally buy this. I play Magic sometimes, infrequently with family members, so I will definitely be buying a box of this and having some fun with it.
Cool. And on more game news from the D&D area, Dark Alliance video game details have been released. It is launching June 22nd on PC and for many consoles, including multiplayer, which, if you're going to play Dark Alliance, I would say you would like multiplayer. And there is also a version with a soundtrack provided by Ozzy Osbourne. Am I reading that right?
It's unclear, but the promo trailer has an Ozzy Osbourne song, and he actually got on Twitter and said, "The only thing parents thought would send their kids straight to hell faster than listening to my music was playing Dungeons and Dragons."
Oh my God.
So we've reached the Ozzy point of D&D's popularity.
Oh wow.
Will he be on a live stream? That is the question.
Oh wow.
Because I would pay money. You invite him on the Venture Maidens. What could possibly go right there?
Yeah, that's a big summary. What could possibly go right?
That's really funny.
Well, I'm not a big video game player. I dabble occasionally, but the first game that my daughter and I played together was the old Dark Alliance and Dark Alliance 2 video games. We love those. We still go back and play them, even though they're however many years old.
I played those with my dad too.
See, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. So we are. My daughter, when she comes home from college, we're all about Dark Alliance on console. So,
there's kind of a retro feel here, right? Because it's all about Icewind Dale, which ties into your work, Celeste, on Rime of the Frostmaiden. But it doesn't seem to be rhyme based. It seems to be crystal shard based. So it's again very retro-y. It's Drizzt, Catti-brie, Wulfgar, or Bruenor, or who you play, and you search for the crystal shard and battle frost giants and beholders and white dragons and other things like that. So.
Yeah, it's going to be really cool, I think, for people who play, the Rime of the Frostmaiden campaign, which is set, in the modern times, canonically, and then traveling back into the past to play this game, I think will be really exciting for players to kind of see that informing that happens that has made the world what it is today. Yeah. It's a really cool way to, harken back to that past.
Mm-hmm.
Sweet.
Nice. Goodman Games wants your Adventures League content at their con. That was shocking to me when I saw that. It was like a tweet, I think, or a Facebook post or something. And I went, huh? Goodman Games? Adventures League? What's going on here? So, Teos, what's going on here?
I don't know. Well, actually, it took a while to uncover what was going on because the wording was a little interesting. But what it seems to be, and they've kind of verified this in a response tweet to me, they put out a call for anybody who has an approved Adventures League adventure that didn't actually get to premiere at a convention. And this happened a lot last year where a lot of the CCC convention-created content adventures were approved, they're legal, and they're supposed to go at the con, and then the con never happened. And so they've never been at a convention. And Goodman Games wants to take those and highlight those. So if you wrote one, you can contact them. They especially want Tier 1 adventures, but any tier works. And they want to showcase it at their online convention, which is called Dungeon Con Online. And they also have a partnership with the DMs Guild, which I think also ties into it in some way. The other thing they did is they announced DCC Legacy, which is sort of an organized play program of sorts. It's an optional system where you play through the various DCC adventures and you fill out a log sheet and sort of gain experience points based on what the challenge level is of the adventure, the level of play for the adventure. There's an 8-page PDF. It's really simple. It's like 4 pages of very simple rules and then 4 pages of log sheets on how you can play all the various Goodman Games adventures and progress through. It's kind of cool.
So DCC is Dungeon Crawl Classics, right? It's its own game that is obviously D&D-like, but not 5e. So Goodman Games has kind of been splitting their focus here. They've been putting out 5e content, especially 5e updates of old D&D adventures. Plus, they've been following their Dungeon Crawl Classics line of games and are trying to get an organized play sort of setting, organized play system going for that. So it's interesting news. We'll see how that works out. Hey, ENnie Awards. I've heard of those. Mm-hmm. If you want to submit to the ENnie Awards, you must do so by May 1st. Teos did a deep dive into trying to figure out how to actually submit something. And
I found it for you.
He's going to give us a 40-minute dissertation.
Oh, no.
On how to submit.
The funny part, so you've got your thing has to have been published between May 1st, 2019 and April 30th, 2020. So you have a few days after, 2 days after this podcast airs or something to submit your product and still have it work. You have until May 1st to submit your submission to get an award on a product that was published in that timeline. There's an online form that's on the ENnies website, ennie-awards.com. If you are a physical product, you must mail it in, so you need to give yourself extra time for that. Get it in the mail now. Do give yourself some time to find the rules on the website. In fact, to know things like what the publishing date is of May 1, 2018 to April 30th, you have to go to the mission statement and code of conduct page. Okay.
It's a good place for it.
Yeah. So the rules are kind of all over the place. For example, for podcasts, I had to look that up, and there are different rules there that are on that code of conduct page. So it's a little quirky, but that's what makes it so lovable, right?
There you go.
I will say I have never submitted Venture Maidens to the ENnies because every time I try, I get lost in the pages. But it's a really good podcast, so you should support people who get ENnies because, boy, they do a lot of work.
They do a lot of work just to get nominated, not to mention their actual work that is nominated.
And as a reminder, you can submit if you worked on a product and the product lead, whatever main body, does not object to your submitting. So, that is what it is. So it's worth, if you were part of something, you don't know if they're going to submit, you could always reach out and say, hey, I worked on this thing with you. Are you going to submit? If not, do you mind if I do? And then you can do that. Also, if you wrote for Adventures League, you can submit your own product or something, for the guild, you can submit that. So it's a good way to just, see what happens and get possibly some recognition through the ENnies system.
Yeah. It's almost as interesting seeing the categories that change and that they come up with than it is to see who actually has won some of these things. Just to get sort of an overall view of what the industry is doing, as more online things, as more organized play content is brought in, as more self-published things come up. It's fun to watch that. Yeah. And speaking of ENnie-worthy content, we are going to get a sneak peek of the third issue, the March issue, of Arcadia magazine from MCDM, as edited by our friend James Introcaso. What's in this third issue?
Oh, there is the Dreamkin, which are 3 new ancestries by none other than Justice Armand. Mm-hmm. We have Aces High, which are new rules for aerial combat by Sam Manel. A Diamond in the Rough, which is an adventure for third-level characters by Alison Huang. And then we have 10 Spells You Need in 5e by someone called Celeste Conowitch.
Oh my gosh, I'm in it! Wow, this is good timing.
You made it.
And all I know is when I saw this piece, it said a weekend at Bernie's spell, and I'm like, what?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I'm really, really excited about this article. I've been sitting through the other 2 issues of Arcadia, because we all wrote it at the same time and got divided, and it's like, you're on the 3rd issue. I'm like, oh, that's so long to wait for me to be able to talk about it. But, now they have announced it, so that's so cool. And, of course, I love bringing things from like 3.5 and 3.0 into 5th edition. So this article is definitely a love letter to that, where I found some of my favorite all-time spells from 3.5 that haven't been brought into 5e yet, and created some, including, oh yes, a Weekend of Bernie's spell, which is essentially a way to get a corpse, puppet it around, make it really easy to have this corpse walk and talk a little bit and pass them off as maybe alive, which I just imagine is going to be so much fun for people.
And I just feel like we need to go and write another Acquisitions Incorporated adventure that's solely based upon the use of this spell.
I think so. I think it should be done.
And the art, I saw the art for it, which is fantastic. For the spell, which it has like this half-dead person.
Yeah, so this spell ended up being a combination of kind of several different spells, because, in 3.5 especially, they had a million spells that kind of did the same thing, but like with slightly different wording. So this spell all combined to make a really easy way of like, if you can't, truly resurrect someone, you can at least do this. So the corpse can walk around by themselves and walk to the, the local temple that's going to be able to resurrect them. Or of course, if you, oh no, we accidentally killed this person. Wow, no, they need to be here. It's just going to be a fun way to circumvent, I feel like, a lot of the mistakes that might be made by adventuring parties.
I think that says a lot about your group, that you would have the need to make that spell.
I have played with several groups that would desperately need this spell.
Good stuff. So you can find all of that in the 3rd issue of Arcadia magazine. Yeah. So let's get on to our main topic, which is making rules based on your live stream campaign, or just your campaign if you are not running a live stream campaign. So to lead us into this, Celeste, could you just give a rundown for those of you who have not heard you on our show or other shows, or heard your show? What is the Venture Maidens? How long has it been running? What type of experiences does it provide, etc.?
Yeah, so Venture Maidens, like I said, it's an actual play D&D show that's been running for about 5 years now, actually over 5 years officially at this point. And right from the get-go, we decided that, hey, we got together as a group. We love telling stories, so let's go ahead and live stream this. And you know what? Let's not just live stream this. Let's also make a podcast out of this. Like, let's just keep it going. Let's do it all. And that's been going super duper well for about 5 years. So the Venture Maidens, I am the dungeon master for that show. We run in a homebrew setting called The Plains. And yeah, over the 5 years, Venture Maidens has become kind of so much more than just a campaign, that you're playing with your friends. We have this entire community that has really built up around it. And the story itself, is very high fantasy, very role play driven, I think, compared to some of the other games you might encounter out there. And it's just so much about player agency in this world, and really plays with the concept of fate and defining your own fate and battling against forces that wish to define your fate is kind of the cornerstone of this game, and also our community, because, we are 5 women and non-binary people putting this show together in a world that is very male-dominated. So our voices have really carved a cool place in this space. And I think, a lot of people, when they think of like femme-led podcasts, can point back to Venture Maidens. We were one of the first ever to have an all femme team. So it's really cool
absolutely.
that we are here. I think we might have been the first actual play podcast. I'll stake it. We were probably the first one. So it's so cool to see that coming to life, and this book is kind of the pinnacle of all that. You know, we're actually about to end our first campaign. We just streamed episode 100 last week, so it's about to come to the end, and the book is going to be there, and
so
it's all amazing.
I am hoping that you are going to tell me that this book was like your condition of employment when DC Gaming was like, we want to hire you, that you were like, I will join you only if. And that it's the coolest play anyone ever made to join a gaming company.
Yeah, it didn't happen like that, but it is funny that this all kind of worked out, because I had been talking to 2C Gaming about kickstarting this book before they even offered me like full-time employment, and I think they enjoyed how I communicated about that assignment so much while I was working with them on other assignments, that they were like, hey, that may have even been the push to be like, this is somebody we really need developing products full-time for our team. So it may have had something to do with it, though that wasn't an obvious condition.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because there really are no new ideas. There are variations of ideas, and you can ask 100 DMs, and they will tell you that their world is the best. And they may have great ideas, but until you see the work that they can put on a page, those ideas don't really mean a heck of a lot. So having you see the great work that you can do makes these ideas seem more real and more viable.
Yeah, I mean, the big irony of all this is, like, whenever I give advice about, you know, how to get into designing for RPGs, I say, never start with a campaign setting. Don't do it. It's so hard to sell. Nobody wants to hear about your campaign setting. And here I am, like, at the end of it here, with having had that advice and that, you know, the challenge of creating a setting and actually making it marketable, something that people want. Because, you know, my big goal with this project is that somebody who has never listened to Venture Maidens will be able to buy this book and love it and use it and enjoy it and get a lot out of it without knowing anything about the Venture Maidens. That's my big goal. So seeing that process and, like, being part of it is really interesting from this inside perspective.
So I'm curious what this product began, like, what was the initial vision, and what is the current vision of what, you know, what it is?
Yeah, so this is, I mean, we are so lucky to have such a positive and wonderful community that surrounds the Venture Maidens. I mean, these are people who hang out with us in the Discord, spin conspiracy, you know, theories about the game, just support us, take part in our events like charity streams. And so they have been asking for a campaign setting for a really long time. And of course, it's something that I've always dreamed about. Like every DM, right? We all secretly want in our hearts to publish our campaign settings. We all want that. So it's definitely something I've been thinking about.
But there's a difference, because I have my old campaign from when I was in high school, and it's terrible.
Yeah.
So yours is actually good. So there's a big difference.
Yeah. But, you know, so that, I guess that's where it started. It's like the idea is always there. And it's like, hey, like, let's give people the tools to, you know, because they're listening. They're investing so much time in our world and enjoying that experience. I want to be able to hand off that experience to other people. And I think where it's come now is really trying to make this book and this product about expansions on how to play this game that we all love. It's not specifically how to play the game in our world. It's how to play the game as we invite you to. What it means to tell really personal character stories and to build that inside of these epic scale campaigns. You know, what it means to actually have NPCs and factions that really influence the game in both a mechanical and a role-playing way, like really honing in on the things that I think make D&D really special, but may not have appeared yet in the 5e rules.
Ooh,
so
that sounds awesome.
Really honing in on those things and giving people the tools to play D&D the way we do.
How did having an audience other than your players sort of inform your campaigns, or inform these ideas of this world and the rules within the world that you wanted to highlight?
Oh my gosh, so much. So much. It is so helpful to see what sets people's hearts on fire, because I'm playing, at the end of the day, I'm playing D&D with my friends. So of course, they're going to be like, you did a great job. I'm like, it's hard to believe that, from and be like, okay, but what it was, from an outside perspective, what are the things you like? What didn't you like? And luckily the audience provides that outside perspective for you. And you see the NPCs that people love and talk about all the time. You see the places and the scenes they choose to make fan art of, and you're like, oh, that was so important. You ask them, what their favorite episodes were, and they tell you it's always these role-playing episodes and these situations, and you're like, okay. So it's constant consumer feedback that lets you know exactly what it is that makes people listen to Venture Maidens as opposed to other shows, or even hearing hey, you set up this cool monster in the game, I introduced it in my games, or hey, could you give me the character class of that NPC? I want to get them in my games. And that kind of direct feedback is so important. It has shaped so much what is going to appear in the book, because these are the things we get asked for and about over and over again. And I was like, gosh, we have to get that in there. We have to get this stuff in there because people want it.
That's fantastic. So how did this come together? Were you given a fair amount of space to think through what you wanted the offering to look like, or was this where 2C had a thought in their mind? How did that all start gelling together?
Yeah, so it's been really great because at first, I was given full freedom to pitch what I wanted for the project. And I feel really lucky over the last, year and a half full-time freelancing. I've worked on so many other people's projects that I've gotten to see really the scope of what people offer, what is new that is happening, what is, tired that people are doing. So with that, they gave me the freedom to I basically put together a table of contents and gave it to them, and they're like, I'm like, here, does this seem like a book that anyone would want to buy? And they have been so helpful and wonderful about the creative back and forth of being a business that sells really successful books and bringing that to my ideas to really refine and create something so special and so unique. So that feedback, that conversation has been invaluable for establishing the project. And I really feel like it worked right away from the get-go, just, marrying the ideas and putting them into a shape and a form that a mass audience would enjoy.
That's great. It seems really powerful to have that mix of something that you know so well and other people feed off of, but then the larger goal of what you're trying to do with the product, right, to sort of change the game. And that's certainly something that I know Shawn and I both love as well, is when you're making something, you're not just making Adventure 127 or Rule 46. You're trying to influence the way D&D works and RPGs work, right? And nudge them in a direction so that the experiences are different and people have aha moments, and then hopefully they'll create even better things off of that. So I'm curious, tell me about some of this. You mentioned some sort of heroic concepts and different ways the game works. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so the big thing that I'm really, really excited about, the new mechanic that we're introducing in the book is called the Heroic Destiny system, which essentially this is an optional system that characters and dungeon masters can use. But basically, if they want to buy into the Heroic Destiny system, basically there are 14 different destinies we're introducing in the book, and these are kind of the big arcs that you have for your character. So becoming enlightened, or forming a symbiotic relationship with a different type of creature, or becoming the Avenger. Those things that when you think of character arcs as a person, those are the heroic destinies. And there are steps that you can achieve along this destiny that there are going to be 4 levels. And each time you achieve a level, it has to be because of an event that happens, an important event along the step of this character growing and walking this path. And you get mechanical benefits for doing that, and then, of course, you also get story benefits. So it's meant to work where you do have your own personal quests that tie in with the larger main campaign, or this is something you can frame like, yeah, we're following the main campaign, but every 4 sessions or so, we're going to focus on this character's, like, achieving a milestone here. So it's a system that's really meant to encourage personal growth with your characters. I feel like all too often we kind of get lost as DMs, just trying to bring this like big, powerful, important story. And we maybe tend to forget that we also have to pay attention to, the real personalities behind each and every character. So this system is intended for a really easy way for the DMs and the PCs to have a conversation about like, hey, like, I think this would be a great place for my next milestone to occur. Or like, this is how I imagine my next milestone is going to be. Or like, it's going to be a good way to open that conversation, to build it into your games that doesn't add stress to, all on the DM to make this happen, or all on the player characters to make this happen. I think it's going to be a really exciting way for people to feel really personally connected to their characters.
Is this something that came out of that emergent play in your campaign, or is this something that was always in the back of your mind that started before you even started running Venture Maidens?
Yeah, well, the way I ran Venture Maidens, and this is kind of, I guess, how I've always sort of run games, but now I'm actually putting it on paper in a way that other people can use. But I always, for Venture Maidens, we divided our show into character arcs that made up the main campaign. So the first 30 episodes were really about like our monk's journey, achieving this specific goal while inside of this larger goal, and each one focused on a different character. And that is like one of the biggest things that we see for feedback with Venture Maidens. They're like, oh my gosh, like I loved how you did this. It feels so important. Each character has their moment and their achievements, and our characters have changed so much over the course of 100 episodes, evolved as people, their philosophies, what they're about. And that's how I used to run, games. Even like I look back 15 years ago at the games I was running, I would theme each episode around a character. So it's like this episode, this character's talents are going to shine, or we're going to touch a little bit on this piece of backstory or something. And that just really made people feel so connected to their characters and to each other, because everybody knew their times were coming as well. So it's like supporting each other through these personal arcs, and it just made those big moments in the main campaign so much more meaningful, because their characters had so much history and, story behind them. So every decision really did feel important, because they had the weight of so many different things influencing them when they had to make
really
those
cool
decisions.
Yeah, I think that's something that is really valuable, because there is a lot of talk about between DMs of how they would like their characters to have more of this personal stake. Mm-hmm. And I think it's something that live streams have taught us, whether it's Critical Role or Rivals. Rivals, they're often talking about, Rivals of Waterdeep, they will talk about how they take turns DMing. And so one of the things they also do is they say, what do you want your character to do? Mm-hmm. And as we're seeing live streams where these characters do these cool things, and they're able to have some transformative moments, and we think, well, how do we have a formula for that, right? How do I enable that, and how do I even tell my players that this is possible?
Yeah.
I've struggled with that a lot in my home campaign, to try to properly let characters know, like, I'm not going to let you break things, but I'm totally willing to do some really neat things if you can show me where you want to go, right?
Yeah, so exactly. That's the goal of this Destiny system, because it's, the player and the DM, if you're buying into the system, the whole group has to buy into it. You have to decide, every player has to pick a Destiny, and the DM has to be involved in, the process. So really imagining what you want for your character, and then pointing at something on a page and going, yes, that's it. And then I've left the freedom in there for those milestones. Of course, I've given, some suggestions of what these like big events can be, but a lot of that is like tailor this to you. And hopefully the player characters will be thinking for their character what they want that journey to look like and communicating with that. I feel like it's a system that gives permission for the players and DMs to talk to each other about, their characters. Sometimes there's this feeling, I think, in D&D, it's like, the dungeon master must keep all the secrets behind the screen, and if we interrupt, that's bad. And it's like, no, I think it's exactly like you were saying, on Critical Role, the conversations that are constantly happening about characters are there. We have those same conversations in Venture Maidens on and off screen. It's like, hey, what do you want for your character? Okay, yeah, let's make that happen. Somebody wants to change their warlock patron. That's a big deal. Like, let's talk about that. Let's build that into the game. Somebody wants to, pick up 4 levels in cleric. All right, how are we going to make that happen? Like, what is that transition like in the game? So hopefully this system will really encourage people and give them a easy way to do that, because I think people really want that. They really want those personal stories in their games and are just kind of struggling how to do it. So here we are, heroic destinies.
Yeah, and part of it is sometimes a problem on the DM side, not being able to let go of a story or not being able to communicate effectively. And sometimes it's on the player side because they just don't know.
Communicate what they want.
Yeah, well, and I think giving them, sometimes players are so focused on the rules that they forget they can do things outside the rules. So exactly as you said, giving them sort of a template for that communication takes even the most intensely rules-focused players and opens their mind up to something within a structure that they are more comfortable with.
Yeah. It's great. You have to give people some kind of guidance in this game because, we are designing this book for people who've played D&D 1,000 times and people who have never in their whole lives played and might want to, step into this way of playing. So that's been at the forefront of my mind, and I think that's probably the part of the book I'm most excited by, because I really feel like that's our gift as Venture Maidens. This is what we've been doing, and we want to be able to give the community a way to play with that greatest gift that we've kind of discovered over the course of 100 episodes.
That's great. Well, I'm looking forward to that because I think that is a direction that the game itself wants to head in. And it's great fun, but I do, as we've all said, there is trepidation on the side of both DM and player, and it's hard for people to understand. Sort of like, if I say I want to have a relationship with one of the merchant princes in Chult, right, like an actual relationship, what does that mean? Like, do I gain power from that, right?
Yeah.
And how can I affect and how should I be able to affect the setting and the campaign if I have that? And we had that happen in my home campaign, and it was fun to play around with. And I think the players were very timid about those kinds of opportunities. And in my mind, I was thinking as DM, I'm willing to give you a lot of power. Yeah, it's really cool.
I love it because we have a leadership is one of the heroic destinies, so becoming the leader of people, which kind of ties in that. We also have like a wealthy destiny, like I just want to get rich. And so those are 2 destinies in there. So I think either of those would be perfectly suited for that scenario. So it's really exciting to hear about and imagine this working in games.
Yeah, and that's great because as a DM, I know a lot of people will, say or try to communicate to the player, what is your end goal? And for players that just sort of want to roll dice and munch on pretzels, well, I just want power or I just want wealth. Making a heroic destiny that way is like, oh, good, we have just this for you. So that's perfect.
I've always said too, when people are like, because I talk a lot about like how do you make NPCs interesting, like how do you make characters interesting in anything, and I'm always like, know your motivation. At the end of the day, what are they trying to achieve? What is the goal they are working towards? And these heroic destinies literally give you that big goal to keep in mind. So when you don't know what decisions to make, that's another tool to be like, oh yes, because I want this, like, this, of course, is the decision. It's just another way to inform excellent role-playing and character decisions.
Did any of the other Venture Maidens team members do writing for this or development for this?
So we have something very exciting. We're all throughout the book, each of the maidens is going to, as their characters, be making like character comments and asides on the book. So we are going to have, Cara Brunhilde, our dwarven barbarian, writing in her blocky script a note about like how to kill this certain monster or, a magic item.
I don't want to say that she's my favorite, but
I mean, a lot of people love Gara. It is what it is. So, we are having those super duper fun touches here. And of course, 2C Gaming has been really awesome about, this is like our dream. So we are really going to be front and center in this, the Kickstarter marketing campaign and everything, because, this is our love letter to the world. So I am so thrilled that all of the maidens are involved in the process and getting to, put their personality on the book as well. That's always been so important in this process.
So as a designer, how much of the design, the rules development specifically, did you do for the show? And how much of it did you say, I'm going to be making a book, I'm going to do it now?
A lot. I love that one. It's been, because when you DM and when you write games, yes, you are writing and you are creating and, so much, but you're making it for your table, which is so much different than like actually making rules that you can hand to anyone in the world without context that they can use. So a lot of it has been taking all of the things I, designed with air quotes for my table and then opening that up and clarifying it and making it simple. And also, like I said, the big thing is making this usable if you don't know anything about Venture Maidens. So framing things that are interesting in terms of mythology and use and, creative inspiration, but not tied specifically to this setting. So getting that imaginative elements in there and also making something really useful that would be useful in any campaign has definitely required a lot of extra design work on top of building what was already there. But what's nice is the ideas were already there, which I feel like is the hard part. Getting a good idea is the hardest part, I feel like, of any really good design. So now it's just tweaking and playtesting, and like that's why I'm so thrilled to have the 2C Gaming team behind me, because sometimes you have a great idea and you're just like, God, I just do not know how to communicate this. And for nothing else, at the end of the day, it's like, hey, let me just tell you what I wrote down. Does this please just tell me if this makes any sense at all? Having a team is so invaluable in so many ways.
And do you have other writers as well that are involved in the project?
We do, yes. So we have three additional three additional writers who are going to be brought onto the project, and I'm so thrilled. I haven't even announced this yet. They'll probably be announced, though, by the time this comes out. But so we have Willia Beal is going to be doing contract writing for the book. So he's worked on Arcadia and also does just a bunch of really cool DMs Guild stuff, is involved in one of our Venture Maidens, the Rising Hunger streams that we do over on the channel. So thrilled to have him on the project. JB Little, so Drop the Die on Twitter, he does a ton of work for our Patreon for Venture Maidens already. So he writes a ton for the community and is really involved. And then we have Kat Kruger is going to be doing work on this, and she is, the DM for D20 Dames, which is another fabulous actual play D&D podcast that we love and have worked with a ton. So having those three writers on the project is going to be so incredible to see their work, and I'm just so thrilled for what they're going to bring.
That's a great team.
Great. I love Kat.
Yeah. I'm so thrilled that they were all my first choices, and the fact that they all were like on board, I was like, this is perfect. It's gonna be so good.
So were there any unexpected challenges that came up, especially in terms of creating something from a live stream?
Yeah, I think so when I did, send my table of contents for the book, here's what it is. Trying to really explain your setting and an 100-episode game in a really simple way to market and communicate that and pitch it was was bonkers. Like how challenging it is to distill something you love so much and are so passionate about into a way that is really, quippy, easy to understand. In 2 sentences, tell me what Venture Maidens is about.
Right.
That kind of stuff, and you're like, so really making those decisions on how to talk about this project and how to sell this project, especially to people who have no idea what Venture Maidens is and may never even listen to the podcast, but still buy the book. That, I think, has been the biggest challenge. Also, organizing 5 years worth of notes and information to try and get that into a format that a human can understand was huge. I feel like I've been playing archivist for the past 6 months, trying to piece things together, and luckily our community has been so wonderful. They've actually started a Venture Maidens Wikipedia page that has been so useful for me to go in and look at, okay, yes, and then people will be like, what was this character? What was their name? What was their deal? And I'm like, oh my god, that character, and going back through. So it's been a lot of work, just tracking that all down. Clarifying, simplifying has been by far the most complicated part of the process.
Do you find sometimes that fans know some things better than you do?
Oh yeah, all the time. Because also we are constantly getting new listeners. So, and these people will binge 100 episodes of a campaign, in 2-3 months. They'll listen to the whole series. Whereas we haven't played, episode 1 or 2 for 5 years. So to them, they've heard it all. It's so fresh for them. And then it's so fascinating to hear people being like, oh my god, this thing in episode 10 ties back to, what just happened in episode 98. And how did you do that? And I'm like, yes.
Yes, I've had it planned the whole time. Yeah.
So, seeing people fall in love with the show from the beginning over and over again is so incredible. It's so incredible, the legacy of this thing. And that's something, too, with designing the book. It's because we are going to have people who discover Venture Maidens indefinitely, and they'll find out there's a book, in the process. So thinking about those people a year from now who tune in and listen to the show and just hear about Venture Maidens and just hear the fact that we have the book. We have to write the book for them, too, the people who are coming in the future. We want this thing to be able to stand all the way through 5e.
So how did you balance that desire to cater to the person that has listened since the beginning, or the person who binged recently, or the person who just started kind of partway through? Or even the person who hasn't listened to any episode. So how,
right.
how do you try to balance
I know
that
how
out?
you do it, right?
How did you not go insane doing this?
We're still working on it. It's that thing, but I think that's going to be the question that we constantly come back to over, the design process. Because of course we've done some pre-production, but when we get in there too, and then also, constantly balancing that, it's going to be really tricky. But I think my solution, my answer is really look at, because there are a lot of actual play podcasts in this world. There are hundreds and hundreds. Mm-hmm. Everyone has an actual play D&D podcast. So what is it about the Venture Maidens that is special? What is it that makes people listen to the Venture Maidens instead of these other shows? And honing in on what the answers to those are, and then bringing that in this book. And it's not specific details of setting. It really is about how we play the game and how we interact with Dungeons and Dragons, why we love it. And so really focusing on those pieces and putting them on the stage, I think, is going to be the answer we're always going to come back to here. So really, again, emphasizing those personal interactions, those character stories inside of the larger narrative, the complex characters, the shades of gray, the idea of fate. Those are going to be the things that are always, whenever I stray away from what's happening, I'm going to circle back to those ideas, because we know I'm going to stray and get lost in the weeds. But we have those core ideas that we're always going to circle back to attract fans of all types.
Do you find yourself at some point thinking, I'm too close to this? Is it personal? I want to put this thing in, even though maybe nobody else loves it, or...
luckily, I am so lucky that I have this freelance year and a half behind me, because I have been through so much heartbreak of like writing something you love and then having to let it go, like for projects, and seeing what people do. You know, once you hand off your work and it goes through 100 other hands and it comes back and you don't even recognize it anymore. I feel like I've been through it all, which has really prepared me to do this project, which is something I love so much and is so near and dear to my heart. And I have luckily, I think, come to the realization that I want people to enjoy this thing. Maybe I don't specifically have the exact answers for how everyone in the world is going to enjoy this thing. That's why I need a team of people, because a team will have a much better idea of what people will love about this. So I'm sure there are going to be some hard decisions, down the road. But ultimately, if we make a book that people love and it's useful, that's my main priority. So everything else is negotiable.
That's cool. Yeah. Did you, or are you going to try to tell the story of Venture Maidens within the product?
I don't think so. I think I've been reading a lot of, of course, like the WotC setting guides that come out. And it was really interesting, too, to look at Explorer's Guide to Wildemount and see, the story of Critical Role and, like, how you actually do a setting. And then to look, of course, like, such legacy settings like the Everon, guide, and, like, how you bring these amazing things to the table. And I don't want, like, our story in the game to, like, impress anything upon anyone. Like, the events of our game happened here. I imagine us as playing in this setting. Like, I was somebody who picked up this book and was like, this is the story I'm going to tell with it. And I want people to feel invited to do the same. Because, of course, in our campaign of Venture Maidens, world-shattering events are happening. We've been playing 100 episodes. We're level 17. Big stuff is happening that might, like, totally wreck things in the world. So I want us to, be in our playground and to blow that up as much as we want. But I want to present the same base playground to somebody else and have them blow it up, and it could look totally different than the way the Venture Maidens have been doing it in the live stream game. So I'm really trying to think about it from that perspective, give people the building blocks without telling them how to build the structures.
I think that makes terrific sense. We thought about this when Shawn and I worked on the Acquisitions Incorporated book.
Yeah, exactly.
It wasn't half as personal as it is for you, but we were still, we were listening to all these shows again. We were going through all these different, thinking about how do you, because originally there was this idea that we would sort of sum up, quote unquote, what happened in all these different live stream episodes. Not only was it just an impossible process to kind of really truly do that, and in the end, we punted and we just said, like, some of the Acting folks the Penny Arcade folks could write this. But in the end, we ended up not doing it because it was too, like, how do you sum it up? It's so much, and it's so many different things for so many different people. And then at the end of it, like you said, is it super useful to have that other story? The whole point is to have your story shine.
Exactly.
Yeah, and there are different audiences to keep in consideration, and so it becomes a whole other sort of business. Put on your Ferengi ears for you. Who's going to be our audience for this? So.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, this is really exciting.
Yeah. Did you have any other questions, Teos?
No. I mean, other than when does it release?
Yeah, so we are going to be going up on Kickstarter probably April 8th, within a couple days of April 8th, give or take. And, of course, the project is going to be running for that month. So we are really, really hoping to hit our stretch goals for this project, because basically all of our stretch goals are going to be add more art to the book, add more stuff to the book, and then pay everybody better. Those are all the stretch goals I want to focus on. So if we achieve those goals, the book will be, it's going to be great no matter what, but, like, the book will be so mind-blowingly good that it will be just remarkable. And, of course, we're aiming to get the PDF out to folks around, like, 6th to 8th month, that point. So you should start seeing, we have so much already in the works, and we have our writers on board, and it's just going to be, things are happening so fast. But please do, April 8th. It's going to be going up on the 2C Gaming Kickstarter account. You can, of course, follow Venture Maidens everywhere at Venture Maidens. We're going to be screaming about it. Me personally at Conowitch, I'm going to be screaming about it. So please do get involved in the project. And even if, you're like, no, it doesn't really sound like the thing, every ounce of support is going to bring, femme voices into this space. I really feel like if this project funds, it's a big statement like, hey, we love D&D a million different ways, and we want to keep that going. So please do consider checking out the Venture Maidens Campaign Guide.
There you go.
Sold me on it.
Yep.
Yay, good!
We will have links up on all of our Mastering Dungeon outlets for it when it goes live. Yeah. So speaking of social media, so where can people follow you, Celeste, and your shows and everything else that you do?
Yeah, like I said, the best thing just to keep up with everything I'm doing is to follow me on Twitter at @CConowitch. If you do want to check out my full schedule of shows I'm making, live streams I'm doing, things I'm producing, check out my podcast network that I co-own called Penwitch Studio. Check out my website, celesteconowitch.com. Real simple. You can just go there. Other than that, let's get in touch. I do a billion different things, so I would love to hear about what you're working on, and share a little bit about my stuff too. So thank you both so much for having me on the show. It's so wonderful that you let me stand and talk about this thing I love so much.
We are always happy to have the best and the brightest come talk to us, and you are both, my friend. You are both.
And we knew that you wouldn't just promote a thing, but this would be an interesting conversation, and it's true.
It's been one of the biggest challenges of my whole life, like bringing this into a book, and I know other people dream about this too. And so any help or advice my experience can be for you, I'm thrilled to be able to share that.
Awesome. And thank you to all our listeners out there and to our patrons. If you would like to become a patron of the show, you can go to patreon.com/MMP. So, Teos, what if people want to hear your thoughts? Where do they go?
Deep inside my brain. Oh, you mean, on social media. It's at AlphaStream on the Twitters. My blog is alphastream.org, where I shared a look back, an index of our exploration discussion we had back way when, Shawn.
Wow.
So folks who want to find that advice, you can now easily find the shows that have it. That was the last thing on my blog. What about you, Shawn? Where do you hide?
Go to Fun with Avalanches on Twitter. No, wait. That's a different one.
I was going to say under your bed, but that's even better.
Yes, I am on Twitter at Shawn Merwin. You can go to the forums at forums.misdirectedmark.com to talk to us, or you can follow the podcast Twitter at Mastering D&D. And Mastering Dungeons is a Misdirected Mark production. So, Teos and Celeste, we are done with our show. What should we do now?
Oh gosh, I have to say something?
You don't have to.
I mean,
let's blast off into space!
Spelljammer confirmed.
Spelljammer confirmed.
Destiny that confirms Spelljammer.
That's right.